All right, it's 12:59. It's close enough for anybody who jumps in at 1. They'll get the idea of the introduction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and then we are going to talk through the idea of automating your law firm. All right. Can everyone see this? If you can see it, just drop a yes in chat if it's clear. Yes, yes, yes. All right, perfect. All right, so to start, before we dive into all these numbers, because these are extremely, extremely important. And what I like about these numbers is you can back into, will this work or won't it work? So what I want to talk about as far as automating your law firm, I don't want to talk about the ways to get the actual fulfillment done, because that is a whole separate topic. There's software out there to create documents and do all that stuff. The fulfillment side of things, from a software standpoint, it's possible to get it automated. As far as I understand out there, there's a lot of document systems out there that will do this. And I know that a lot of people talk about VAs and using VAs in firms, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But what a lot of people do not consider when it comes to the dream of automating your firm is the economics of automating it. Now, there's a few assumptions involved when it comes to automating your firm, and that is you're probably going to provide cheaper services because it's very little touch to the end user, and it's mostly done by the end user themselves. So they're entering their information, they're doing all the work pretty much. And so as a result, they're hoping for a cheaper product because you have no overhead as a result. And so the cheaper product is one thing that you have to consider when it comes to this. And also you have to consider that you are commoditizing yourself. So being a commodity, people want to pay cheap prices. It's a race to the bottom in a commoditized industry. So that is another thing that you have to consider when it comes to automating your firm. So I want to give you guys a little bit of background before we dive into the numbers, before we look at firms who have automated and how successful they are. And then I'm going to talk about some market dynamics that are very, very important to consider as well. So to start, just to begin with, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the end user, right? If you're buying a car, do you want to buy it online, or do you want to go test drive it and look at it in person, get some information about it, all that fun stuff that you do when you buy a car, right? Not many people are buying cars online. Some people are these days. There are early adopters. There are people who are into, not going to the dealership because they don't want to deal with a salesperson. But for the most part, most people still go to the dealership. It's still a relatively cemented process that we're used to these days. Is the market shifting? Maybe. Will it completely shift? We don't know. That is one example. Now, the other example is, a lot of you might not know this about Eric and myself. So Eric is the other co-founder of Empirical 360, and we've been marketing for close to 10 years now. We've spent close to $50 million in ads. So we're very, very well versed. In the beginning of our marketing career, we were actually working with a lot of insurance companies. That's actually where we got our start, was insurance. And we've worked with the biggest insurance companies. So literally $100 million and $1 billion insurance companies. Aetna was one of them. And so the dream in the insurance industry is exactly the same as this automated dream in the law firm industry. Is they wanted to automate the sales process so Medicare recipients could buy Medicare Advantage products and Medicare supplement products online. And so the normal dynamic in the insurance industry is people would fill out a form on a website, they would get called by a call center, and then they would buy over the phone. That's the dynamic that the insurance industry is used to. And before that, it was across the table selling. So someone would show up to your house and they would sell you across the table. So those are the two dynamics that the insurance industry has experienced for the past 50 to 100 years. And the new dream is automating the insurance sales process. And to give you an idea of how big of a dream this is, there's a whole industry around it. It's called InsurTech. And the companies that we used to work with would get investments from private equity firms of 10 to 20 to $30 million to build out these software platforms and then automate the sales process. And we were the marketing company that was in charge of bringing those products to the end user, to the consumer, which would be a Medicare recipient. And we were actually the first agency ever to sell a Medicare supplement policy online. And that's pretty cool. What did it do for us? Not a whole lot in the moment, but we are the first people who've ever sold a Medicare supplement policy online. So it's pretty cool. And we did this for Aetna, and we did it for another brand that we can't disclose because we signed NDAs. but we have experience in bringing products to consumers in a market where it's not necessarily ready for it yet. And the same thing happened there as it will happen in a law firm. And I'm going to explain those economics in a second. But the problem that we had in insurance is the cost to acquire a client was too high to sell something online, and there wasn't enough margin on the product. And so ultimately, that industry is not ready for it yet. And I'm going to explain the market dynamics for law firms because we'll all understand that a little bit better. So to start, what I want to look at is two separate sets of data here. There is the traditional way that law firms close clients, and I'm going to look at those numbers with you. And then there is the e-commerce version where it's completely fulfilled by the end user. And when I say e-commerce, it's exactly like you're thinking. It's like an Amazon. It's like when you go buy a t-shirt online, you're doing it all of it yourself, and then they're shipping it to you. Very little fulfillment on their side, and you're doing all of the heavy lifting. And so this is the dream that a lot of law firms have, that I talk to them on the phone, and they're like, I want to have a document fulfillment process where the person goes in, they enter all their information, and then out comes a plan, and they pay me $1,000 or something like that. So the traditional means of selling in a law firm today is just like this. And I'm going to walk through each one of these numbers. So first things first, you have to get a way to acquire traffic to your site or your funnel. And so what we're going to assume here is you're getting 100 clicks. Now, every one of those clicks costs money, no matter what platform you're using, but we're going to use Google here because we have the most metrics on Google. And so to give you an idea of what these clicks cost, you can see that the word estate planning attorney, the click cost can be upwards of $19. For the word trust attorney, the click cost can be $21. All right, so we're going to use that number in here. We're going to use $21. Now, what we're going to assume in the rest of this is that every 100 clicks that visit our website, 25% of those people will actually turn into a lead. So they will either call us or fill out the form to get in contact with us. Now, again, this is the traditional way that law firms close clients. So if you have 25 leads because you got 100 clicks and 25% of them turn into a lead, that's great. That means 25 people have raised their hand and said, yes, I want an estate plan, or yes, I want a trust, or yes, I want will. Now, a certain percentage of those leads are actually going to book an appointment. Not everybody's going to book because either they didn't want to, or they were scared of the cost, or they just weren't the right fit and the intake person filtered them out, whatever it is. So we're going to assume that 70% of those people book, and these are benchmark numbers that we use. So that means that 18 people booked an appointment on your calendar to hear about an estate plan. Now, not all of those people are going to show to the consultation. So we're going to assume that 50% of those 18 people are actually going to show up to either the Zoom meeting or your office to actually hear what it is you can do for them and provide for them. So that means that 9 people have actually showed up, and now we have their full attention. Now, out of those 9 people, let's say you close 30% of them. And some people close higher, some people close lower. So we're just going to assume 30% closing. And at 30% closing, you're going to be very profitable, as you'll see in a second here. So at 30% closing, that means you talked to 9 people, 30% of them turned into a client, which means you got 3 clients out of this cohort of leads. Now, on average, the numbers that I hear is most people charge between $3,000 to $5,000 for a trust. So we're just going to put $3,500 value here. Now, if you close 3 people and they're worth $3,500 to you, that means you brought in, and these numbers have decimal places. If I were to move them over, the numbers aren't perfect. It's actually 2.6 clients. So if you close 3 people, we're just rounding up for numbers' sake. If these were larger numbers, these averages will play out. So if you take 3 clients times $3,500, you're going to get roughly $9,000 in revenue. That would be 9,185 because it's times 2.6 clients. We're going to ignore the 0.6 for now. And your total cost for this is $2,100. So you're making roughly $7,000 in this scenario, which is very, very typical. This is extremely doable with the current marketing that we do for our clients. So we're happy with these numbers, right? We're getting a good return on our investment. It's profitable. And this is your typical selling dynamic. Now, e-commerce is a completely different animal. And e-commerce, or the automated way that people are wanting to sell plans these days, are where someone goes to your website, they fill out a big form, and then that is put into some software program, and then out comes the plan afterwards. And there's very little touch, if not any, by the attorney themselves. And so when someone is transacting on e-commerce, instead of every 25, or instead of out of 100 visitors, 25 people turn into a lead, the typical e-commerce conversion rate is around 2 to 3%. And I'm pulling that straight off of Google. There's actually an average here. It's 2.5 to 3%. Now, this average here is also taking into account things like t-shirts, dresses, all kinds of other e-commerce products that are a lot cheaper where people will convert higher. So if we're going to say we're going to convert at 2%, in my opinion, we're being a little generous. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume the same metrics here. So we're going to have 100 clicks. Remember, our clicks are going to cost $21 a piece because that's what we have over here. And our conversion rate is going to be 2%. So what this means is every 100 people that come to our website, 2% of them are actually going to buy a plan all by themselves. So what this means is we're going to get 2 sales. Now, the average sale value here is the big question. If we look at LegalZoom, which this is the biggest player in the game, we can see that they're selling a living trust estate plan for $399. So $400. Now, we'll talk more about LegalZoom in a second here, but you are going to be compared to LegalZoom. Remember, this is now a commoditized industry. You're not providing any personal services, and it's completely automated as far as fulfillment is concerned. So you are right on par with LegalZoom, and they're going to wonder, why aren't you charging the same prices as LegalZoom? That's going to be a rebuttal that you're going to have to deal with somehow, some way in your funnel. So if LegalZoom is charging $400 and you're charging $500, because I'm throwing a little bit extra on there for you because you deserve it, you're going to make $1,000 off of 2 sales. Because remember, you got 2 sales. They're an average value of $500 a piece, which means your total revenue is $1,000, and it cost you $2,100 to generate this traffic. So you're in the whole $1,100 in this flow here. So you can see how tricky it can be to rely solely on automated selling or e-commerce selling when it comes to this type of business. Now, you can massage these numbers a little bit. Let's just say you're doing a good job and you're converting at 3%. Now your revenue is $1,500 and you're still losing money. So you're probably wondering, how is it that you can make money with this? The reality is, if you're doing an e-commerce conversion rate and you're not calling your people or you're not interacting with them, the chances of you being profitable are very, very slim. And the reason for that is the market is used to a certain dynamic. Now, what do I mean by that? I keep saying the market dynamic. So we're going to assume that you're using Google as your acquisition source, because Google is one of the most reliable acquisition sources you can get. It's one of the highest quality acquisition sources you can get, other than referrals. But for the most part, if you're doing an automated firm, you're relying on digital traffic to fill your funnel. And so I highly recommend Google because it's one of the best sources. Now, Google works on an auction system, and how it works is all of the advertisers in an area will bid on certain keywords, and those bids are what drive the market. And so each individual market has its own bid because it relates to the end cost that they're willing to pay to acquire a customer. And so what does that mean? So for estate planning attorneys, they are willing to pay upwards of $20 per click because they know that the numbers are going to work out for them to be profitable. And we just saw that on our sheet. Now, if you were to look at a personal injury click, that click can cost $500 to $600 because at the end of their case, they may make $10, $20, $30, $50,000. So they are willing to pay, $1,500 for a lead because they are making a whole lot more money on the other end of it. Now, e-commerce conversion rates typically dictate a click cost of around $1 to $3 because, again, you're not converting as high. And so as a result, you cannot afford to pay as high cost per click. But because the legal industry is not yet on an e-commerce type market dynamic, the click cost and the fulfillment don't make sense yet. They're not matching. And this is the exact same dynamic that the insurance industry saw when they tried to take their platforms automated. Insurance call centers are typically fulfilling sales, so the click cost is very high, and e-commerce conversion rates do not cooperate with a high click cost. All right, so I hope that's making sense for you. I know I'm saying a lot of crazy terms here and I'm using a lot of numbers, but these are the realities of the market. You have to understand the market before you try and automate when the market is not ready for it. And so let's talk about LegalZoom, because this is your biggest competitor if you're trying to automate your firm. And so LegalZoom is the biggest player out there. And a couple of things I want to draw attention to when it comes to LegalZoom. So LegalZoom is a public company and they have tons of funding. And so LegalZoom can afford to be unprofitable for extended periods of time because they have equity behind them and they have a plan. They're not just doing this to be unprofitable. It's not a hobby for them. They are building a massive user base, and then they are upselling those people and they're cross-selling those people to make money after the fact. So a lot of these times in a lot of e-commerce dynamics, you will actually lose money on your first sale, and you're relying on your database or your list of leads or your list of customers to buy from you again and again and again before you actually make money. This is why Amazon was unprofitable for 10 years. They built a massive base of users. They got them on all of their platforms. They indoctrinated them into Amazon. And after 10 years time, they became profitable because of the upsell, the cross sell. Now you get videos from Amazon. You get your books from Amazon, you get your products from Amazon, so on and so forth. But in the beginning, Amazon lost money for a long time because they knew that acquiring customers was valuable in the long run because they could upsell, cross-sell, and so on and so forth. So that is a big, big thing there because Amazon had the strength and the equity and the backing to stay unprofitable for a long time and not freak out. Now, as most law firms and most solo practitioners or small law firms, you do not have the luxury of being unprofitable for 1, 2, 3, 4 months at a time, let alone years. And so before we dive into the LegalZoom model, what I want to show you is LegalZoom's earnings. So this is LegalZoom's earnings. Again, they're public, so we have access to this information. If you look at their net income in March of 2022, they lost $30 million. So that quarter, they posted negative earnings. If you look at December, they posted negative 20 million. If you look at September, they posted negative 39 million. And if you look at June, they posted negative $38 million. And just as a fun little exercise, if you look at their 5-year stock chart, again, the whole market is taking a beating as it is, but their 5-year stock chart, LegalZoom has had a horrible go of things. They started up at $40 5 years ago, and they're down at $13. So LegalZoom does not make money, or at least they do not post a profit. And again, they could be doing this strategically because they're building a massive base of users. They're looking to upsell those people. They're looking to cross-sell those people. They could be selling people's data in the long run. We don't know their monetization plan, but they do have a plan. They're doing this for a reason. They're not doing it for fun because they love losing millions of dollars. I'm sure they have a plan and they'll dig themselves out of this hole. But the reality is, for years, LegalZoom has not been profitable. And so you're competing, or you're trying to compete in that same market against a big player who has time and money, and it's very hard to compete because of the reasons I've talked about. So I know I've said a lot of things. I highly encourage you to rewatch this video and go through the numbers. If you have any questions about this, or you have any questions about the more economics of automating your firm, definitely reach out, because this seems to be a really, really hot topic. And I don't like the idea of people diving into this without realizing these economics, because these things will stop you in your tracks. They will make you unprofitable if you don't understand these. Now, are there ways for you to make this profitable? Absolutely. And if you guys are interested, I can show you a follow-up video on how I would approach automating a firm or automating fulfillment of a firm from the marketing and sales standpoint. But it is complicated. It's definitely a machine that you have to build. It's not going to be built in a day or in a week. It's something that is a long-term plan. So again, I've talked a lot here. I've said a lot of crazy things. This video will be recorded. It'll be in the Facebook group, and I'll put it on YouTube. If you guys have any questions about this stuff, I really, really love talking about this, because this is one of those unpopular opinions, but we use purely data and numbers to back these decisions. And we've made mistakes like this before. We bought e-commerce businesses before, and we didn't realize a lot of these things. And as a result, those businesses failed early on in our years. So again, I'm coming at this from a purely number standpoint, so I can hopefully help you guys avoid some of these dreams that are being sold out there, that you can fully automate your firm, because acquisition is not taken into account in a lot of these programs that are being sold out there. So again, I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, or you want to see a follow-up video on how I would approach automating a firm and what kind of things you would need in place to actually do that, let me know in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to make that video and put it out for you guys. And that will be a longer video, because I have to talk about a lot of different marketing tactics, and then we'll figure out the economics behind it. So it'd be pretty fun. Thank you for your time. Again, leave a comment below if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video next week. Thank you.